Puzzles 2017.
All right, so I'm David Holton. I've done a lot of FPGA crypto cracking stuff, and I also run TourCon, this conference in San Diego. And so this is called Legacy Crypto Never Dies, but the subtitle is Why Won't DES Just Die? Like, why are we still dealing with this crap? So did anybody see my presentation in 2012 with Moxie, Marlinspike? Just trying to see. Okay, cool. So I'll go over a little bit of this, but basically we presented a number of years ago on 100% break in MS-CHAP v2. And for those that might not be familiar with the protocol, it provides mutual authentication for a number of different things. The things that we specifically focused on were PPTP VPNs and WPA2 Enterprise, but we quickly found out there's a number of other things that use it as well. And this research was nothing new. Actually, in '99, Mudge and Bruce Schneier and David Wagner published a paper that spelled out all these problems and basically stated that at the time, state actors and well-funded groups could easily break this. And so this is by no means new research. We just kind of looked into it a little bit more. So if you aren't that familiar with MS-CHAP v2, the basic idea is that it's a challenge response authentication protocol that involves a password. So actually sent across the network, you have your challenge, which is essentially your known plain text, and then you have a response, which is essentially your ciphertext. And so you know all this information, and all of this is basically based on a password that turns into an NT hash through MD4, and then creates your 128-bit key that's used to create your challenge response. And so up until we gave our talk, people were attacking the user password by doing dictionary attacks, where they would try all the weak passwords in order to crack the password that's used for these sorts of things. So if you actually analyze, like doing a full break on this, using the password, it's somewhere around 92 bits worth of passwords you have to search through, which is really difficult to do. And so up until this point, it was pretty much just a password-based attack, and they were just only finding passwords that were really weak. And so this paper basically said, why attack that when you can attack the password equivalent, which is this NT hash? And the NT hash is actually split into 3 separate keys that are used to encrypt the same plain text, this challenge hash up here. So you can basically crack these independently. And the basic idea here is that it's 3 independent DES operations. So they claimed it would be roughly around 2 to the 57 that you would have to brute force in order to break this NT hash. And so we started looking at this, and when you're actually implementing this, we have the exact same plain text for both of these DES operations. So naive implementation is that you would crack these independently and do 2 full DES brute forces. But it's super easy to just basically encrypt the same plain text and then just do 2 compares after that. So it's really just 2 to the 56. You only go through the key space once, worst case, in order to crack both of these keys. And the third key is only 16 bits, so that can be easily brute forced. And so we basically demonstrated that this can actually be cracked with 2 to the 56 DES computations. But I think the cool thing about this presentation is that we made this accessible to everybody instead of just well-funded groups. And so we released software where you could point it toward a capture of a PBTP connection, and then it would extract out the key material and create the session token that then you could submit to cloudcracker.com, which was Moxie's service that he had running. And then in the back end, that would run on an FPGA cluster that I had in my basement. And so this basically made it accessible for everybody. We wanted to kind of rate limit it, so we started charging $20 for it. But a lot of people think that DES is relatively easy to break because people were doing it back in 1999. And just for reference, the EFF DES cracker ran around 90 billion keys per second and took about 9.2 days to go through the whole key space. And we were targeting something around 24 hours to brute force the full key. So for 24 hours, just doing some benchmarks with AWS, it would take around 80,000 CPU cores in order to brute force DES in 24 hours, and that's around $125,000 worth of AWS credits, which I imagine they would give you a little bit of a discount if you buy bulk like that. And then we looked at the GPU instances, and that's around 1,800 GPUs, or around 6 months on one GPU. And in AWS credits, that's around $20,000. And on the system that I had with just random hardware from my company that we couldn't resell, I managed to scrounge together 48 FPGAs. And normally a system like this would sell for over $100,000, but I managed to kind of borrow the hardware and put it in my basement. And so we offered this for $20 a key. And this is a picture of it in my basement. So it's inside this rack over here next to my SEM. So, of course, everybody rushed to fix things, right? All this can be cracked easily. And of course not, right? We know how things go. So, now a few years later we look, and one of the main examples in our talk was iPredator VPN, because it's one of the more popular VPN providers. And we specifically called them out. And of course, they're still offering PPTP VPNs. They just added this little note on their website like, oh, you probably shouldn't use PPTP because it's insecure, but you can still use it. And so that's basically what we've seen across the board. Like, all these VPN providers are still providing PPTP VPNs. And then people kind of discounted the WPA2 hack as like, oh, it's not really an issue. And so recently I started looking back into this stuff. And then also we were getting tons and tons of jobs running through the system, so I just started looking at these weird ones that started coming through. So normally, we would have ones that look like fairly random plain text and ciphertext, but we noticed ones where it's like 112233. That doesn't look very random, and so just wondering what's up with that. And then we also noticed ones where both of the ciphertexts are exactly the same, and so they're obviously using this for something that's not MS-CHAP v2. And so, I just started seeing some different articles. People are definitely still cracking WPA2 enterprise. And there's all sorts of tutorials on the internet now for setting up your own rogue AP with a fake Radius server for basically stealing these credentials to crack through either a sleep or through Cloud Cracker. And then also just with the search on the 1122334, it's the default challenge string for Metasploit's SMB relay module. So people are definitely using it for that. So we started looking into this a little bit more, and yeah, the bottom line is that people are using this for other purposes than what was originally intended. And one day, traffic to my server just dropped off, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? And I noticed that cloudcracker.com just died, went off the internet. I emailed Moxie, he never replied. And so I ended up setting up my own site that basically just provides the DES cracking service specifically for the FPGA system I have. And while I was setting this up, I was wanting to kind of add some extra features and try to update everything to make it work with the new things that people were doing. So what were people using it for? And what features should I add? And most of all, the whole reason why this project exists is to, how can we kill DES once and for all, and how, for just legacy crypto in general that everybody knows is insecure, but it's always going to be there. So looking at the SMB relay module, if you look at the Landman and NTLM v1 challenge response, it's exactly the same as MS-CHAP v2. And so people realized this shortly after our talk, and started doing these attacks where they were basically using that to crack people's passwords, where they would either set up their own fake Samba server or redirect servers, and then when people log in, then they would snarf the credentials and crack the NTLM hash. And basically how this works is that so if you use the SMB relay module, it'll start just spitting out its captured NT hash. These are the network NT hash and LM hash values here. And then you can basically take that, feed it directly into ChapCrack, which Moxie wrote a long time ago, and give it that fixed challenge of 11223344566778899. And then it'll create a token, you submit that to the website, and then ultimately, the value you get back from us in an email within 24 hours is either the landman hash or the NTLM hash, based on which one of these values you submit to us. And then you can do any number of pass the hash attacks or whatever to use the hash to authenticate with the actual system. And then people actually started making it super easy to create your own fake access points for doing WPA2 enterprise attacks. And so this is easy creds that'll actually fully set up rogue host APD daemon and radius server and everything. And then as people connect, it just basically does the same thing where it gives you the challenge and response that was used. And then you can take those and do the exact same thing, feed it to the system, and it'll crack the NT hash equivalent that then you can use to authenticate to the WPA2 enterprise network. And I started asking people in the industry, like, how often do they actually see people doing full certificate validation of the server? And a bunch of people I talked to said that it's like maybe 95% of the time this attack works. And so either people aren't checking certificates at all, there's lots of phones that don't really support it or handle it very well, and there's also tons of people that just say, oh, certificate error or whatever, I'm just going to type in my credentials anyway. So it's definitely very much still a thing. And then shortly after we gave our talk in 2012, I don't know if you guys saw this talk by Karsten Knoll, SR Labs, basically doing remote updates to SIM cards with the SIM toolkit. A lot of these operators rely on DES for verifying their remote updates. And so he demonstrated that, at least with a lot of the carriers that he looked at, a good percentage of them still use DES, and you can easily crack the key and be able to send remote updates to people's phones. And there's all sorts of nefarious things you can do with that. But one thing that I thought was kind of cool is that recently on Mr. Robot, they featured this hack and actually used Cloud Cracker to crack the DES keys, and so that was kind of neat. So the main features I wanted to add to this was to provide more of a general purpose interface instead of people just kind of like abusing this, the system in order to crack whatever they wanted. And so I just set out to create a really simple rule, and the basic idea here is that now you can submit jobs to the system where if you're trying to, let's say if you have some ciphertext and you know some of the plain text for that block, then you can use a simple mask, and then we allow up to 24 bits of zeros. So as long as you know like something about the plain text, then we'll basically find all the keys that match that, send you a list of all the keys, and then you can further verify on your end. And so this feature has been up for a while now, and I kind of wanted to just experiment with this and try to break something using this new interface. And so some of my friends presented on this a number of years ago on how Kerberos provides the DES option, and downgrade attacks are fairly easy. And so I was just like, oh, nobody uses DES anymore with Kerberos. And for my day job, I just looked at our network, and of course our network only does DES and RC4. So I'm sure that there's a number of environments out there that have pre-Windows 2008 computers that still have to provide legacy support and support DES. So just looking at this, the basic idea is that with the initial authentication with the KDC, you can man the middle it and then downgrade and say, oh, only DES is supported, and then basically from then on they use DES keys for all of Kerberos. So I wrote a simple EtterCap filter that essentially swaps out all the possible encryption types that flow through with just DES CBC, and this actually works really well. And so then all the values you see flow by are all DES encrypted, and then it's all ASN1 encoded, and so all the ASN1 values are fairly fixed, and so you can actually get really reliable known plaintext out of that. One example like that I have shown on here that you probably can't see at all is that there's this particular block that's very fixed, and it's entirely based on the current day, or actually it's the year and the month is like part of that field, and so it's pretty easy to figure out the entire known plaintext just based on that. And then as far as CBC, it's fairly simple to figure out the actual plaintext for the known plaintext for that particular DES block, because you it's basically just the ciphertext of the previous block XORed with the plain text of your current block, and so you XOR those together, and that's your known plain text for what you're trying to crack. And so, just because they're using some mode doesn't necessarily mean that it's adding much security for these types of attacks where you're brute forcing the full key space. So then I wrote some code to extract out all this known plain text blocks, and then essentially just create Cloud Cracker tokens. So if you're able to run this ettercap filter, and then just like do a PCAP capture of the traffic, run it into here, it'll basically pull out a bunch of tokens that you can use for cracking the Kerberos keys. And I still need to do some work on actually leveraging that to then pull down all the tickets and authenticate to the domain controller and all that sort of stuff. But that's I guess for another talk. So yeah, then you can submit it to the system, and then you get an email with the key later on. So then I started seeing people asking specifically for cracking DES crypt hashes. Do you guys remember DES crypt from like the 90s or something, like back when Linux was using that? And it was like a long time ago I wrote some FPGA code for cracking these, but like I never saw any use for this, and so I just gave up on it. But now everybody's emailing me asking if I can crack these. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll try to. And just if you guys remember, this was actually designed to replace an older M209 cipher that took 1.25 milliseconds on a PDP-11, and they wanted their new cipher to take over 1 second on a PDP-11, and so that's the design criteria for this. But it's essentially 25 rounds of DES, and I figured, yeah, nobody uses this anymore, right? And so, does anybody here reverse engineer QNX or come across QNX at all? A couple people, yeah. So I found out that tons of vehicles are using QNX for their infotainment system and stuff like that. And so I'm like, okay, I guess this is worthwhile, and so I just like search for presentations on different things. And so this is actually what Charlie Miller and Chris Valisek's paper on cracking the Jeep Cherokee in 2014 Jeep Cherokee, and so they just published the shadow file for that. I'm like, okay, I got some stuff to work off of. Another presentation where they published the shadow file, and then just searching around, I noticed there's tons of DES hashes on the internet that people are trying to get passwords for, and so maybe there's something to this. And so I set out to basically do the full possible key space for this, and so this is 95 possible characters for all possible key character lengths. And so with 25 rounds of DES, it takes around 3 days for my system to go through the full typable key space for this. And so I just started, you can just submit this directly to the system if you go to crack.sh now. And I figured that there must be secure passwords out there that I could actually use to use the system on. There has to be some people that actually use special characters and stuff in their passwords, right? You would think so. Yeah? And so a friend of mine, I mentioned this, that I built the system, and he's like, oh, I got a hash for you to crack. Here, it's for the OnStar, the newest OnStar systems have run QNX, and here's their shadow file for the root password for all the OnStar systems. I'm like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And so I put it in my system, and I'm waiting, and it basically immediately returns, and the password is root. And I'm like, what the hell? Are you kidding me? I was expecting something good out of that. And so then I went through and looked at these other ones, and it's like simple, like DT donkey. So anyway, this is a call out to any of you. If you have any DES crypt hashes from QNX systems that you aren't able to crack with John the Ripper, let me know, because I want to have something that this is good for. So please help me out here. Yeah. So anyway, if you go on the GitHub, we have ways to verify all of how we're doing everything as far as byte ordering, keys with parity versus non-parity, so you can verify your implementation. And then also you can submit jobs fairly easily and create tokens through this. And the tokens are all base 64 encoded, so it's easy to write yourself if you want to, but this is just a reference implementation. And then this code also implements the Kerberos key cracking stuff, so you at least have an idea for how to code with it as well. And then, yeah, basically, the token you generate, you can submit it to the website, and you know, usually within a day, you'll receive a list of all the keys that match that, and then, you know, it's a sizable, you know, it's down to a decent size that you can easily verify with software or whatever. So that's the interface that we have right now. And so if you happen to come across DES in the wild, which is becoming a more increasingly, you know, popular thing for some reason, then let me know. And I mean, that's pretty much the talk. I really want to just have some help with killing legacy crypto, and so if anybody wants to or has any ideas, please just email me, and I'll just give you access to the system for free, because I mean, I just want to get it out there, and the main reason why we charge money is just because we don't want it flooded from you know, all these people trying to crack stupid things. So you can find everything on crack.sh, on GitHub. There's links on the website as well. And then also, just a quick plug, we have TourCon San Diego coming up this year at the end of August. And then we also have Tour Camp, which is the US Hacker Camp, next year on an island in Washington, which is usually a lot of fun. So thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Any questions or comments? Complaints? Okay, cool, thanks.